This episode is proudly supported by Powerhouse Parramatta.
Powerhouse Parramatta will open in 2025. The new museum will be the largest in New South Wales and is determined to offer the very best in hospitality. Perhaps your business can be part of defining a food and beverage offering which is expected to cater to 2 million visitors a year. This incredible opportunity for operators includes retail food and beverage, in-house residential catering, events and other hospitality ventures, encapsulating the diversity of cuisines and cultures that make Western Sydney so exciting. Interested to learn more? Powerhouse invites food and beverage operators to a briefing on Tuesday, 8th of August. For more information and to register for this exclusive briefing, go to powerhouse.com.au.
We've really just made it into sort of our place. So it's like you're coming to our house for dinner, and I think in such a noisy world, you know, with all the social media and all these TV shows now, it's quite hard sometimes for a chef to find their voice, and I think I found it now.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. When we talk about regional dining, we often think of restaurants in the countryside, in small country towns with a small population. We don't often talk about large regional cities and how the restaurants of these speak of the region. Shayne Mansfield is the head chef of the Flotilla in Newcastle, New South Wales. Shayne, how are you?
Good, Huck. How are you?
I'm good. You're cooking in Newcastle these days. What's the food scene like in Newcastle?
Yeah, it's explosive at the moment. There's heaps going on. Having said that, we've just lost a very good restaurant, Restaurant Mason. So he's decided to close his doors. But other than that, we've got some really good options. Everything from sort of refined casual dining, which is what we do, down to good burgers and heaps of pubs. Pub scene here is cracking. So
tell us a little bit about the region and the produce that you have access to.
Yeah, it's amazing produce down here. We're using lots of local producers. So Little Hill Farm, Simon and Kelly out there. I say to the guests, I've been using them for about 6 years now, since I moved down, and I say to the guests all the time, I'm not a religious person, but if I believed in reincarnation, I'd like to come back as one of their chickens. So yeah, they're fantastic. And then we've got some little girls as well, Dylan and Elle from Newcastle Greens. They're doing some pretty cool stuff. And then Stuart and Dell up in Foster from Mother Fungus Mushrooms. We're very, very honoured that we get to use them.
You mentioned you've been in the region for about 6 years. What drew you to the region?
I was working for Spices, so Spices luxury resorts and retreats. When I got back from London, I hit up Cameron Matthews, who's a good buddy of mine now and a mentor. And I went and worked at the Long Apron. So I did a stint at the Long Apron, and then I moved on for a year, and they had a head chef opportunity down in the Hunter Valley. So I packed up my gear and moved down to the Hunter Valley, which was cool. So that was my first head chef gig, which was pretty rocky territory.
Tell us a bit about that first sort of gig, and also away sort of from an area that you were used to in Brisbane. Yeah.
So obviously cut my teeth in Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast. And then, to sort of go down and be your first head chef gig in a beautiful restaurant like Restaurant Botanica was, it was, I don't know, you sort of work your career working all the way through, waiting to be head chef, and really, really excited, and all of a sudden it's there, and you're like, oh shit, like the buck stops with me now. So yeah, a lot of learning, a lot of self-teaching as well. But I had Cam there for a majority of it, and he's steering the ship, as you would say. So yeah, it was good. It was interesting. There was a lot of learning.
Well, I want to go over sort of all of the sort of important moments in your career, but take us back to when you were young. Well, what sort of role did food play in your family?
Yeah, very big role. I think my mum was a single mum for a while, so her cooking skills, I mean, I still say her lasagna is probably my favourite. It's the most bastardised Western version of lasagna that you can find, but I don't know, when it's your mum, it's a bit personal then, isn't it? So it was quite nice. But yeah, my again, just to not to be too cliche, my grandmother was a massive influence. She was always cooking, and ever since I was, I don't know, about 7 or 8, I was sort of in the kitchen with her, just asking her heaps of questions. And yeah, she would get whole chickens in, and she would make 4 meals out of it for her and my grandfather. So she'd do all different dishes out of it. So yeah, it was cool to see that from a young age. And she was always into pickling and preserving, and there's all these weird, wonderful jars underneath the kitchen sink, which kind of freaked me out when I first saw them. And then you learn what they are, and yeah. And I think that's translated into a lot of cooking that we do now at Flotilla as well. So I use a lot of my grandmother's recipes that she handed down.
What was the first sort of stepping stone for you to a move in for a career in hospitality?
I didn't like school. I couldn't stand school. It was more of a social outlet for me. I just didn't get it. I just didn't understand it. So my mother said to me, "You need to finish grade 10," which I did quite miserably. And she said, "You can't just sit around and do nothing. You need to do something." And cooking was always something that I was passionate about. She said, "Right, well, we're going to enroll you into a pre-vocational course. You can do it for 6 months." So I did that at the Nambour TAFE there. Did my 6-month course, and then yeah, I just fell in love with it even more. I just really liked it, and then I started my apprenticeship. So started from the bottom. So I worked at a pub for a year, which I think is important. Some people might scoff at it at working at pubs. I don't. I think they're great. But you learn all the basics there. You learn cutting skills and what a majority of vegetables are. Because if you had to put a bunch of chervil in front of me when I was 10 years old, I have no idea what you're talking about. So yeah. Yeah, so that was really good. And then I always envisioned myself sort of working on the higher end of hospitality. So I went and then worked as a second and third year at the Spirit House in Yandina, which was an absolute monster of a restaurant. And that's where I met probably one of my first sort of real influences when it comes to the chefing world was Zeb Gilbert, who was, of course, at Wasabi, and he's now moved on to Happiness Island, I think it's called, Joy Island. Yeah, and he was amazing. Yeah, definitely. I remember the head chef telling me I had to go crack coconuts, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm like, how do we do that? And he showed me. He sat out the back, took our shoes off, put the coconut in between our legs, and broke it open with a rock. I thought he was having me on, but no, that's how he did it. So that, and then julienning 5 kilos of chili and not realizing that you're supposed to thoroughly wash your hands before you go to the bathroom. So come back into the kitchen, and chef, I think I was 16 at the time, 17. I said, I'm burning. So he sent me home with a tub of yogurt down the front of me. So yeah, I'm very wary when I cut chilies now, even now. So
in the early days, what was a really sort of influential moments in the kitchen for you that helped you carve a path in hospitality?
Yeah, I think working for people like Zeb Gilbert, he said to me one day, I put a plate on the pass as a starry-eyed second year. He said to me, "Is that good enough?" And I said, I'm not too sure, chef. And he said, who's the most important person in your life? And I said, it's my grandmother. He said, would you have served that to her? And I said, probably not, chef. And he said that's the answer. So redo it again. And I've kind of always just followed that whole thing, my whole career now. I always say to my young guys now. So it was a very, very influential thing to say to such a young, impressionable kid. And it's just stuck with me for life. So, yeah, it was good.
You spent a lot of your earlier career in Brisbane. Tell us about that period of time and what effect it had on you.
Yeah, I had a lead to go and work for Philip Johnson at Echo. So I stumbled in there, and at the time they'd won the best restaurant in Australia a few years before I got down there, and I was just in awe of this guy. I had all these cookbooks, and I kind of fangirled over him a little bit, I guess you'd say. And just really wanted to work there. So I went in there and worked, and that was even another level on top of where I'd come from. So That was probably the first time I'd actually seen, because Spirit House was sort of the Thai flavors and the Southeast Asian cooking style. And then that was the proper first European kitchen I'd sort of worked with Phil. So yeah, it was just amazing. It was a whirlwind. It was just super busy. And all the people that I'd met there and friends that I've had now since my time there, it was just amazing. Like, cooking duck for the first time as a young chef, like, a la minute, and from scratch, not sous videing it, like, just being taught how to render duck down. Like, it was just super, just those basic things that I think we take for granted as chefs now. It was just really important. And then Phil said, I think it's time for you to go overseas. And then I got on a plane and went to London. So
Phil Johnson is a legend of the hospitality sector in Australia. Do you have any stories of what it's like working with him?
Yeah, fun. He's a legend. He's just such a good person. He's just always full of life and energy, and nothing's ever too hard for him. You can always talk to him, and just the way he taught us it was really cool. It was very nurturing. It wasn't yelling or aggressive. It was just, it was a really good place to be. I mean, we worked super hard and we did some big numbers, but we always sat down and had a beer at the end of it. So, and had some good chats. And his knowledge is just unbelievable.
On his advice, you set off to the UK. What was that like compared to the kitchens that you'd worked at in Australia?
A different world over there. I now sort of relate it to, you do your apprenticeship here in Australia and you cut your teeth in some of the really good restaurants, and then you go over to London. And it's a bit like university, I guess. I went there with one focus in mind, and that was to do Michelin, and just see if I could do it there. And I think I did. So it was, So jumped on the plane, went over there. I actually had a really bad experience for probably the first 2 months I was there, and nearly ended up coming back home. It was just a rough time. But persevered and saw through it. So
you spent time working in Jason Atherton's kitchens. What sort of impact did that have on you?
Massive impact. Like I said, it was a bit of a rough trot. So when I first got there, I worked for a restaurant there that it was a very well-known restaurant. A lot of famous people used to eat there, which is another thing. Like, the most famous person we used to see in Echo sometimes was, some of the Broncos, which is great. That's awesome. But, when you do your first shift upstairs in an open kitchen, shucking oysters, and Johnny Depp walks in, it's pretty eye-opening. So, small country kid from Brisbane, and you rubbing shoulders with some of these people was pretty insane to see, and it was fun. But it was that one there. I kind of didn't really want to work there for too long, and ended up getting quite sick. So had to spend some time in hospital there, and then when I got out, I went back to go work at that restaurant, and they had packed all my stuff out of the locker and threw it down the alleyway, and said, "Oh, you obviously can't." It was pretty bad. They said, "You obviously can't handle this industry. You need to think of doing something else." And you're 26, 27 at the time, and that was pretty shit. So I kind of like when people say you can't do something. I think it fuels the fire even more. So he said that to me, and he goes, "What are you going to do there?" So I'm going to go and do Michelin, and he kind of laughed at me. And then I ended up working for Jason Atherton. So it was amazing. That was just another different experience.
You worked quite closely with executive head chef Paul Walsh over there. Tell us about the influence that he had.
Yeah, he's another great mentor that I sort of look up to. He had spent a lot of time working for Claire at Royal Hospital Road, so Ramsay's restaurant. He just he's the way he thought about food and it's just the way he ran the kitchen. I'd never seen that before, and it was amazing. We opened up City Social, which was on the 25th floor of the old Queen Victoria building in Liverpool Street. And it was amazing. The kitchen was just all decked out. It was 360-degree views of London. I thought I had a dream job. I thought it was a joke that they were paying me, even though we were doing 90 to 100-hour weeks. So Yeah, and then that was my first job on Saucier. So we're doing 160, 170 for lunch and then 200 for dinner at that level too. And again, everything was cooked from scratch. So it was like nothing was sous vide. So, it was pretty hard not to go down every single service. And as the pun would intend, deep in the weeds every single day. So.
While working for Jason, it gave you the opportunity to sort of explore Europe as well. Do you have any stories of the impact that experience of Europe had on you?
Yeah, definitely. I remember my first week when I started at City Social, the head chef Paul came up to me and he said, "Oh, you need to figure out when you're going on holidays." I said, "I don't understand that, chef. I've only just started." And he said, "No, you need something to look forward to. You're going to work super hard here and you need to not get lost." So that was a really cool concept that I thought, that's really cool. So I thought about it for a week and then I said, "I'll take 2 weeks off in this." And he goes, "Yep, that's fine. At least you've got something to work towards then too." And it was cool because, this is post-COVID, pre-COVID, not post-COVID, and the industry was already in dire straits and it was hard to get staff there. And to even just think about even having a holiday was just a very foreign concept to me, especially in a kitchen so busy. So then I just jumped on a plane. Obviously, when you live in London, it's a 40-minute flight to Rome, which is really cool. Sorry, man. Yeah, 40-minute flight to Rome, which was really cool. And then, I just remember it's something so simple as sitting in an old pasta bar, just having pappardelle with fresh truffles and egg yolk. I was like, holy shit. I just thought, can it get any better than this? I just thought it was great.
What lured you back to Australia?
I had been working for Jason for probably a year and a half to 2 years, and they had offered me sponsorship. They said, your visa's coming to an end. We'd like to offer you to stay on. We think you've got some potential here, and I was really excited about that. But not unfortunately, I was seeing a girl at the time who had just finished up uni and really wanted to go to Australia. So I was like, okay, cool. So we'll move home. So yeah, that brought me home.
Tell us about your career. You mentioned when you came back to Australia, you mentioned Botanica and spices. Cameron Matthews is a huge influence on what they've been able to achieve in Australia with their restaurants. What's it been like working with him?
Yeah, amazing. When I knew I was coming home, my partner at the time, Ellie, she said she wanted to go back to the Sunshine Coast, where I sort of did a little bit of my apprenticeship there and lived. My family was there as well, and I envisioned going back to Melbourne and Sydney because I kind of didn't want to go backwards. So I had heard about wasabi and I'd heard about the long apron, and as much as I love Japanese flavors and everything to do with Japanese, I not really my sort of cup of tea when it comes to cooking. So I hit up Cameron Matthews, and I remember I'd sent him email after email after email for about 3 weeks. So the guy must have thought I was mental. And I said, I'm coming home and I want a job. We'll do dishes for you if I need to. And then I remember he said, right, I think I was in the airport in Qatar on the way home, and he said, right, you've got a job interview and a trial tomorrow. So I landed at 9 a.m. on the Thursday and drove up the coast, and I think my trial was at 1 o'clock that day. So super jet lagged. So it was a fun night.
How different was it cooking in sort of resort restaurants compared to what you'd experienced?
Yeah, I think the long apron, although it was in a retreat, it was very much so still a sort of a standalone restaurant, and Cam very much ran it that way as well. We obviously did breakfast, but we had a breakfast team on, and then doing the food that were there, it was awesome. It was really good. It was kind of like we'd just gone from London, and then that restaurant had moved into the hinterland. And again, like the way Cam looks at food and his philosophy around everything was just really intoxicating. And he kind of taught me that there's no boundaries. As long as something tastes nice and it's executed properly, just go for the hills, which is, again, another very valuable lesson to learn, I think, and still growing from that now.
These days, as we mentioned at the top of the show, you're in Newcastle at Flotilla. Tell us about the restaurant and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so it's a 35-seater restaurant. We've got some seats on the deck as well, but obviously in summer it's crazy hot, and in winter it's too cold. So it's just a bit of a carryover out the front. But yeah, 35-seater. We turn that twice. So a busy night for us is anywhere between 70 to 80. But it's an open kitchen, which I thought was awesome because, and I've heard this on this show a few times. Like chefs are normally in boxes with no windows, and it's okay, and it obviously breeds a certain aspect in kitchen culture as well. Like high tempers and yelling, and it's sort of psychological warfare sometimes, which we've all been subjected to. But to go into an open kitchen like that it was different. You have to change. The guests don't want to see that, or maybe some people do. I don't know. Maybe they've watched Boiling Point too many times. I'm not too sure, but it it changes, and now it's a bit more of a nurturing, and it's like a theatre now. So, and all these open kitchens are the same. Like people are interested now in what you want to do, and they're always asking questions. So when you walk into Flotilla, we cook over 80% of our stuff's cooked over mabrasa, so over charcoal. So big fire in there, and yeah, it's just everyone loves it, and they just ask heap of questions. We've got a 6-top that we sit at the bar, so they're literally 4 feet away from us, and you get some really good guests in there that are very chatty. And I think as a chef as well, that's been very important for us and the young guys that are in there now too. Is that I don't know, it might sound a bit selfish, but that instant gratification of watching people eat your food and just just super happy to be there, and they're interested in what you're doing. And yeah, I think it's really, really valuable for chefs.
You mentioned the influence of your grandmother on your cooking now. Tell us about your food, and do you have a dish or two you can talk about that sort of exemplifies where you're at?
Yeah, 100%. We use a lot of my grandmother's recipes that she passed on to me. So like our pickling mix is the recipe that my grandmother gave me. We were doing a dessert for spring summer, like strawberries and cream, and you do a shortcake biscuit recipe, and it's my grandmother. So I've been eating that thing for 30 odd years now, and it hasn't changed. It's just delicious, and yeah. So people that say you cook like a grandma, that's a compliment to me. So I like it. Yeah.
You took on the role during the pandemic. What's it been like being head chef of a restaurant that's had, so many lockdowns and opening and sort of difficult times? What's it been like this sort of last 2 years?
Yeah, same as everyone. It's been very rocky. But we have some amazing owners in Chris and Zach, and they've kind of just been very supportive, and they've helped us out. So the last lockdown that we had last year, which was 9 weeks, I think it was, we had a week or two off, and I said to my restaurant manager, Eddie, I said, man, I can't do this. We need to do something. And we went through a whole bunch of concepts of what we were going to do. And on a Sunday, we do a set menu at Flotilla. So it's 5 courses. Everyone comes in, and we use it as a bit of an experimental menu. To feed the dishes on for the next season's menu as well. So we decided to just do that and do it take home, and we just sort of ran the gauntlet. We weren't sure what was going to happen, and the local support was overwhelming. It was amazing. Like we were selling out weeks in advance. Yeah, it's just great, and it was great to just get the boys back in the kitchen, get everyone busy again, and actually start seeing people's faces, albeit that they're all wearing masks, but. Yeah, it was still good to just be in the community doing something.
What sort of impact has the last sort of couple of years had on you? You've had this great opportunity to really express yourself with your food, but it's been challenging times. Have you changed your approach to the way you deliver your interpretation of hospitality?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've found my voice finally. I've been really lucky to the owners there have just been absolutely amazing. And they've just sort of let Eduardo, who's my restaurant manager, and myself just have free reign with it. And we've really just made it into sort of our place. So it's like you're coming to our house for dinner. And I think in such a noisy world, with all the social media and all these TV shows now, it's quite hard sometimes for a chef to find their voice. And I think I found it now. So yeah, it's good.
What do you love about what you do?
Loads of things. The creativity, just meeting people. I think that's my favorite thing is the relationships you build and the people that you meet. And not last year, the year before, I went and made a knife with a local knife maker named Craig Mayer, and it was amazing to see someone with so much passion for another thing other than cooking. Obviously, as chefs, you're super passionate about it and you're about the food and the growers, and then you go and you run into these other people that are passionate about, whether it be knife making or making pottery or anything like that. And I think that's my favorite thing, is just hanging out with people that are like-minded and they just have passion for their thing. And I think it's super important. I just love it. I think it's intoxicating when you meet people like that.
Well, Shayne, it's amazing the path that you're carving there in Newcastle with the food scene. We've loved having you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear your story. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks very much, man. Thanks for having me on. And thank you to you too for what you're doing. This podcast is awesome, man. So keep it up.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.